Our movie starts with a voiceover of John Goodman, and John introduces us to Venice Beach and its only licensed detective, Steve Ford. He also talks a little bit about the choices that Steve made and the kind of mental headspace he was in when he made them. And then we see Steve in some kind of skate park giving drunk advice to a bunch of 12-year-olds about bad decision making. Back in his car, we see John in deep thought about his first case under Steve. And the case was about a missing person, Nola, who's been missing since July. And suddenly, John receives a text from Steve to keep Nola in his sight. John follows her into this building where he discovers that it's some kind of support group for people who have addiction to sex. Even though he felt very out of place, he still attends the meeting, and he tells Nola that her brothers are looking for her and that him and Steve were hired to find her. And surprisingly enough, she agrees to cooperate and he drives her to Steve's house. And her and Steve get it on in his bedroom until her very muscular big brothers get there and they try to break Steve's face. And even though he was naked, he manages to get away and he seeks refuge at this pizza joint owned by Tino. And Tino was a previous client of Steve's and he offers him a deal for his safety. If Steve helps Tino retrieve his car from a local thug, he will be protected. Steve agrees to this deal, and after the altercation with Nola's brothers die down, he goes to this thug's place. Apparently his name is Spyder, and he disguises himself as a pizza worker, gets inside the house, and he steals his car. It was pretty chaotic, and the car got damaged, like a lot, but he still manages to retrieve it. And on the next scene, we see Steve with Dave Jones. Dave is a longtime friend of Steve, and he's also going through a divorce that's taking a bit of a toll on him. We then see Steve's sister Katie and her daughter Taylor, along with their beloved dog Buddy. And after promising that he'd return Buddy by the next morning, he takes him out to the beach, they play, and then they grab some coffee, and there he meets Liu the Jew. And Liu contracts Steve to do a little bit of research for him. Apparently he needs Steve's street smarts and identifying somebody that keeps tagging his buildings. And in return, Liu offers to sell Steve his parents' place that they sold for a slightly increased sum of money. And because the deal sounded good to him, Steve takes on the job. And as he was in his car waiting for the taggers to come, he accidentally falls asleep and misses them. And a day later, while he was enjoying his time with Nola, he gets a call from Katie who tells him that their house has been robbed and Buddy has been taken. And looking at a few security cameras, Steve discovers that the two robbers actually worked for Snyder and he's the one that has his dog. Snyder is the same guy that Steve stole a car from, by the way. Yeah. And Steve goes to Snyder's house to negotiate the release of Buddy, who is being held for a ransom of $4,000 to be paid within 24 hours. And Steve agrees to the terms and leaves Snyder's house. And who does Steve get the money from? A very dangerous loan shark called Yuri. And he asks Yuri for a loan of $5,000. And Yuri gives him the money after threatening him. And Steve is not really in a good mental space at this moment, and he becomes very irritated when Jaws sees pictures of his childhood and makes comment about his weight. And then Dave was waiting for him outside, and he asks him for help about his marriage and a bunch of financial issues. He tells him not to sign papers, but despite Steve's advices, Dave disregards it, and he signs the papers anyways. And then we cut to the scene where Liu the Jew was having a very difficult time with people who draw graffiti. And he approaches Steve and he tells him that he needs him to find this person who's doing all these graffiti paintings at his building. And if Steve delivered, Liu the Jew would give him his house for free. And Steve tells John to find this so-called graffiti artist. And John discovers that these paintings are not really graffiti. They're actually a piece of pretty great artwork made by somebody called Salvatore Lopez. And as John was discovering all of this, back at Snyder's house, Steve returns with the money, but only to learn that Spyder's girlfriend Lupe has stolen Buddy and a briefcase full of cocaine. And in an effort to recover his drugs, Spyder agrees to pay Steve 3 times the original amount if he can retrieve the drugs. And with John's help, Steve tracks down Lupe at this motel. And as Steve was trying to get through to Lupe, John was looking for signs of Salvatore Lopez. But he gets momentarily sidetracked by Nola, who seduces him in his car, and he enjoys it very much. And Steve manages to break into Lupe's apartment, but only to be subdued by a very large man who's dressed in drag, named Gigi. And Gigi knocks him out. When he wakes up, he finds a lot of men who are dressed like women, but he manages to escape. And back at home, Steve is greeted by Yuri and a bodyguard who knocks him out. Apparently, the loan was only due for a day. And Steve wakes up and manages to go to Dave, and he gets the money to pay back Yuri. And as he was waiting for Yuri to arrive so he can pay back his debt, Steve gets a call from John telling him that he's tracked down Salvatore. And without any hesitation, Steve heads over to John to interrogate Salvatore. And Salvatore tells him everything, and Steve partners up with Dave, and they confront these guys that hired Salvatore to do all those paintings at Lou the Jew's buildings. And meanwhile, Oscar, Spyder's right-hand man, is seen having relations with Lupe, revealing that they stole the money together. However, Oscar storms out after accusing Lupe of stealing from the stolen loot, but she denies everything. And as soon as Oscar leaves with the dog, Lupe calls someone and starts planning another betrayal. And to Steve and Dave's surprise, it was Gigi. And on their journey, they run into some trouble when their tires go flat. While Gigi tries to fix the tires, Dave blasts him with a taser, and Steve confronts Lupe. Steve discovers that Buddy is now with Spyder, and that Lupe sold some of the drugs in the briefcase to a black guy who usually attends a club called Birdcage. And at Birdcage, Steven and Dave encounter Prince, and by threatening to donate the club, they manage to escape with the cocaine. And then the next scene takes us to Steve's house, where the two newly formed partners, Steve and Dave, come up with a plan to rescue Buddy. And suddenly, John arrives with Nola's two brothers, and Nola's brothers respect and listen to John because he has started dating Nola, and he's even met her mother. Together, a team consisting of Steve, Dave, and Nola's brothers head over to Spyder's house ready to fight. However, the situation takes a dramatic turn when Spyder discovers Oscar's betrayal, leading him to shoot Oscar in the head. And then Spyder proceeds to have a very peaceful transaction with Steve. And in exchange for the cocaine, Spyder releases Buddy and also takes the money. And as the movie seems to be winding down, John provides a voiceover revealing that Lou kept his promise about the house, and Katie and Taylor began to live with Steve, and Steve got his dog back, and John ended up with the girl. But the movie doesn't really end on good terms. We see Prince and his men interrogating John to where Steve is. And despite John not giving them any information, Prince and his men manage to find Steve's location from one of John's voice recordings. And the movie ends with them leaving John in a warehouse as they set out to seek revenge on Steve. Do you think they find Steve and torture him or kill him? Leave your comments in the comment section. That's pretty much how the movie ends. I hope you guys liked our recap. Like the video, subscribe to my channel. I will see you on the next recap. Bye.